What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the PT Coffee Cast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
Doing good. I'm in one of those moods.
Hey, dude, you are in one of those moods.
Yeah.
It's because you got up early this morning.
And this is my third coffee, and it's only 9 a.m.
Dude, same.
Oh, really?
This episode's going to be pretty fire. And
like
we both
that.
have our Christmas socks on, which I'm very excited about.
Tell me what you've got.
I have Grinch. I'm a Grinch kind of guy.
I've got Elf, Will Ferrell.
Very much. These make sense.
Yeah, like this is who we are.
Yeah.
It's basically, you can gather a lot from seeing these sock choices.
I'm going to hit you with a question.
Let's do this.
So last year, around this time, I asked you to rank your top Christmas movies. I think this year, what I want to do, and in no particular order, I want to rank your favorite Christmas songs or jingles.
What's the difference between a song and a jingle?
I'm thinking like a song is like Frosty the Snowman,
Okay.
and a jingle is like the Who's singing that little Who song in The Grinch. But that could be the same thing.
Okay,
Could,
alright.
could be like I could be just like overthinking it. But that's kind of what I'm throwing out to you.
Okay. I'm gonna go. All right, number one, Frosty the Snowman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's classic. It's my son's favorite song, so I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
All right, number two. I'm gonna go with Old Rudolph. Okay, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I mean, great character.
Mm-hmm.
Leads the pack, right? Trusty Rudolph.
Yeah.
Had a bit of a comeback story, so I appreciate a good comeback story, Wasn't a popular reindeer, became a popular reindeer, became the leader of the pack, and, I really respect that. Number three, I don't remember the name of the song, but the one that's in Home Alone when he's setting up all the trap. Run, Run, Rudolph.
Oh, that one.
I mean, I know
there's
Rudolph.
there's a theme here.
There's a theme here, right? But Run, Run, Rudolph is like classic.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
So, in no particular order, for me, Little Drummer Boy.
Ooh, pum.
Yeah, big fan. The Charlie Brown theme song is one that I really enjoy. There's just something when you hear that, you're like, you just warms my heart, And then last, I kind of talked about it, but I'm a big Grinch guy, obviously here. When the Who's sing their little Who song, and I'm not even quite.
Like Abu Right. Okay.
I don't really know the words, but the vibe of that song gets me going.
Are there even words? I don't know.
I think there are words, but those would be like right now, top three.
Did your school, when you were younger, ever do Christmas carols?
I would imagine.
Because I could totally see you as the kid who yells out "Power up a pum pum" at the top of your lungs. Every class had that one kid.
Dude, 100%. That was me. That is the type of kid I was too.
I love it.
It's good, grade school.
That's amazing.
That makes me laugh. I'm glad we did that.
That's good.
All right, let's get into the important stuff. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. If you're unsubscribed, make sure you subscribe on your podcast platform. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. Make sure you're checking out our YouTube so you can see our fancy Christmas socks. And check out themovementmentorship.com for all things mentorship and podcast. Super excited to dive into this episode. I'm going to pass it over to Will to kind of lay the stage, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, so the kind of scenario here is like you're just kind of talking with your client, and something that I try to do with a little bit of intention is to actually invite them in a little bit into the process that I have when I'm kind of planning their session, and the amount of thought that I'm trying to put into what I do with them, and that could be something as simple as like, hey, when I was planning your session, I was looking through all our prior conversations and exercise progressions, and then I stumbled upon uh, what some of your goals were originally, and here's what they were. And I think we can talk a lot about maybe why I try to do that and how that can kind of help.
Yeah, I think it's a nice like tactic or strategy, maybe is a better word, of diving into some of those things with the clients, as well as like letting the client in on the fact that you are thinking about them and trying to move them forward. It's something, here we really try to express to our clients how valuable they are to us. We only see one client an hour. We put a lot of time and effort into that client. We want them to feel heard. We want them to feel valued. And I think like showing them into that side of like, hey, here's what I was doing and thinking about and looking at when preparing for you. I think that is an important thing. One, it makes the client feel like they're cared for, which you can't fake that. You can't lie and make that up and just be like, I did this but didn't. But like authentically doing that, I think is very powerful. And then it leads you down the road of being able to have a bit of a discussion about like where they were, where they are now, and maybe where they still need to get to.
Yeah, it shows them that you're considering like the whole evolution of their rehab process and not just kind of like winging an individual session. It's like you actually have a vision that is based upon what they want and what you think is possible right now, and that you're like considering all those factors and aiming to keep things progressive and moving toward their goals. You're not just coasting.
Which I think a lot of challenge that clinicians have and that clients may have with continuing is that gets lost. Like they get lost on that pathway. And I think especially with anything that's hard, but rehab, when you're going through the hard times of rehab and there's injury and you're feeling like I'm not going to get where I want to go, it's very easily lost, where you are on that journey.
And I think like, there's this idea of like, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in our minds when we're working with people that's not necessarily explicitly showed.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like if you're having someone squat, you're paying attention to a lot of things, and you're maybe thinking about a lot of things too. Things that they've said that they're worried about, maybe specifically with that movement. And so there's a lot of extra thought. And I think sometimes like we need to not be afraid to actually share what those thoughts are for people so that they can see the types of the depth of things that we're thinking about. Like, hey, I remember, and I was looking back at my notes when I was planning for your session, that you were really nervous about doing a squat because of X, Y, and Z. So originally, I held back from doing a lot of that, but we've been working on things, and it's really cool to see where you're at now, being more confident. Have you noticed that as well? And it's just really showing like the thought process that's put on to that specific thing that you're doing, and actually showing it explicitly versus just having it in your mind. I think people need to see that there is this whole thought process behind that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it kind of takes away this allure of like you're a guru of some sorts. It's like,
Yeah.
You're just sharing the process, right? And I really enjoy doing that with my clients. And as we're going through stuff, I'm very open as to like, hey, here's what I'm considering in my head and what I'm going through based off my understanding of anatomy, physiology, all of that stuff. And I think people appreciate that, especially like putting it in a way that they can understand as well.
And tying it back to the entirety of their time being spent with you, because like that's all being considered in your thought process and reasoning. And like, I think that's important for people to see.
So what are some of the like responses you get or the positives maybe that you get out of sharing that?
Well, I think one, like you kind of alluded to earlier, like it just shows people that you care, right? Like that's a main thing. It's like I really care and do put a lot of thought, and I want people to see that. And I think that actually does help people have more trust in you. You know, like trust is earned. It's not like just magically given. So for someone to know, like, hey, I actually spend like 15 minutes before the session looking back at everything, re-jogging my memory, and like writing specific notes to trigger those memories, and uh, care a lot about keeping them accountable to their original goals and stuff like that. And so people see that you care. I think that's a huge thing. A second response that I get, and kind of reason why I asked that question, is like a classic example I can think of is someone with an ankle injury who, when they came in, they identified, not only do I want to solve this issue right now, but I also want to put things in place so that I can reduce the risk of getting this injury again. And that, as you go through the process, often gets a little bit like faded into the abyss. And you're like, I'm feeling a lot better. I don't really need to do this. But I think what I do often is, like, when we're getting to that point, it's like, hey, when I was looking through your notes and I took a peek at like the original kind of meeting that we had, and a big thing that you emphasized was this, that you wanted to put things in place to try to prevent injuries in the future. And that's kind of where we're at now. And I want to make sure that you do achieve that, because and what that's going to involve is us pushing things a little bit further than where you were originally, so that we can try to set you up in a better position. And usually people are like, oh yeah, you're right, like I forgot about that, and yeah, I really, like, this has interfered with my ability to function in these ways, and I want to do what we can to try to work on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think if you tie that with doing a good job of pre-framing the fact that that is going to come, because most of that does come for clients, like that also ties in nicely, because you can remind them of the conversation that you had of like, hey, you're going to get to this point, right? So I think that also really helps. That kind of ties in some other things that we've talked about on the podcast before, but I agree. And I think the other thing it can do is, if the individual maybe still is struggling a little bit with getting out of the rehab stage or where they want to be, but have made really big positive steps, it's a great opportunity to highlight that progress that they've made, because it is very easy to forget where you were and how far you've come in a relatively short period of time. And even if it is a long period of time, like how far you've progressed, I think it's a good opportunity to like really highlight those things too.
Yeah, and like, as much as we hate kind of talking about charting and stuff, this is where like good charting can really help you.
Yeah.
Because if you can at least have enough information in there to really trigger like how those improvements have happened, and maybe some notes on like things that your clients have said and stuff like that, the more kind of I guess like the better you can tell that story to your client.
Yeah. I saw Jess the other day do this with a client, and it was awesome because she had them do like a single leg jump or something. They were working on Achilles injury, and Jess just had her do it, and then like was like, hey, how did that go? And she's like, oh, I felt good. I maybe feel like I could jump a little farther, have a little bit more strength, but it felt good. And then Jess was like, yeah, the last time we did that, you were barely able to jump, and there was like a ton of pain when you did it. And she's like, oh, really? She's like, oh, that's great. Like, so that's an example of that, right? And like that client just forgot about how much pain and how much challenge they did have, or didn't even realize that that was something that they were struggling with at one point in time. So to tie that back in, as well as to have that in your chart or in your mind as you go through it, is huge.
It's sometimes hard to be to continue to be motivated, and part of our job is to like help bring those things to the forefront, so somebody can be like, oh, like I'm actually super proud of like where I've come, and like oh yeah, and like that was where my goal was at this point, so like I'm I'm right where I want to be. Let's keep at this, versus like, accepting, the status quo when that's not what they actually want.
Right.
They want more.
Yeah, that's a big part of like where I think coaching it comes in. Like that's being a coach, right? And not just trying to get them out of pain per se, because that person was out of pain but didn't even really realize the progress that they've made. And if you're not thinking about how to strategically set that up as a clinician, you're going to miss out on some valuable opportunities for the client, but also some valuable opportunities to position yourself as someone who can really help people accomplish what they want and more.
Yeah, like what we do is not just the exercises that we put forward or the like plan that we put forward. It's how do we use our ability to communicate and work with people to keep them moving towards their goals, like to actually help them see it through. That's the hard part. And that's the part where we can really make huge impact also.
Totally. Is there anything else from that you would say?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of ways that you could use that idea. The main thing is just remembering that it's okay to tell people about your thought process and how you kind of have arrived at the things that you want to do with someone. Yeah. Tell them that thought process, what you've factored into that decision-making process, highlight the evolution, and bring back their original kind of goals, to the forefront.
Yeah. These are all just strategies to open up conversation and provide learning opportunities for the client. And there's many different ways you could go about doing that with them, like just even that process that we just talked about. I like this way as a nice way to enter into that, as well as show them a little bit behind the scenes of like what's going on in your brain and how you're preparing for them.
And yeah, I think the cool thing is like it's open-ended at the end of the day. Like you're bringing those things to the forefront, but I have had people who end up wanting to go a different direction than they originally did. And so it provides the opportunity and opens the door for that also.
Yeah, love it. Sweet. All right, that's all we got for today. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast, make sure that you subscribe at PT Coffee Cast on your podcast platforms, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you're listening. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see our Christmas socks. And as well, check out themovementmentorship.com for all things mentorship and some content there as well. But that's all we got for today, guys. As always, stay caffeinated. Peace.